We are so back. The Connors returns for a shortened final season. I hate to see him go, but glad that we get 6 more episodes with them. So let's talk about episode 1 of season 7. It's going to be a great day. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my Connors review for It's Gonna Be a Great Day. This is the premiere episode of season 7. We get just 6 episodes to say goodbye to this family, but look, we're blessed to get these because at any point this show could have just been canceled. Obviously, the costs are always rising for legacy shows like this, where we have people that have been doing these characters for a long, long time. In this case, decades, really, but in the form of the Connors for 7 years now. And I don't know specifically whose decision it was to end the show. I don't know if ABC said, "Look, thank you, but we're moving away from comedies." I mean, they almost, other than Abbott Elementary, they almost have no comedies on the air anymore. And then who knows if the actors involved wanted to go on and do other things. John Goodman, obviously, is in The Righteous Gemstones on HBO, and Laurie Metcalf always doing shows on, Broadway and whatnot. So who knows? But in any event, I'm very, very happy that we have these 6 final episodes to say goodbye to this family. So before we get into the specific episode, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to Dan Reviews It, well, I do movie and TV reviews, and just about every day I post something new. But when we have these Connors episodes, and previously Roseanne Season 10, I have reviews for every episode that has aired for both of those shows. And then I went back during Roseanne Season 10 and did season reviews of the original Roseanne from the 90s that we grew up with. So there's a lot of Roseanne and the Connors content on my channel, but there's a lot of other stuff too that I would love for you to check out. So listen, please subscribe if you're not one of my subscribers already, and click that notification bell too so you get the alerts for all my new drops. But you can just like this video, comment below. That stuff helps the channel out too. And for these videos specifically, I love interacting with the Connors fans in the comments. So please do comment with your thoughts on this episode. So let's get into it. This is called It's Gonna Be a Great Day, and it was directed by Connors fave Jody Margolin Hahn. She's been directing several episodes per season since the beginning of at least the Connors run. I feel like I feel like I took a deep dive into her at one point, and she was a part of the original Roseanne production crew or something. Let's see. It just says years active, 1986. Well, that makes sense. Okay, so here you go. She worked as an associate director, production associate, script supervisor, and technical coordinator on Give Me a Break, Roseanne, and The Nanny. Okay, so look, as I thought, she's been part of the Roseanne family, since the 90s or maybe even the 80s. So anyway, she directed almost half of last season's 13 episodes, and so she is at the director's chair again for this one. And this was written by Emily Wilson and Mitch Hunter, who both contribute 1 or 2 episodes per season, sometimes with other people. Like, for example, Emily Wilson was part of the teleplay team for the season 5 finale, the grad finale where Mark graduates. There was like 4 names in there, but Emily Wilson was one of them. And then Mitch Hunter is part of the crew as well, and Jana Hunter as well. So I don't know if they're a married couple or what their story is, but anyway, so they wrote this one. So we've got all Connors veterans here to direct and write this episode, and everyone is here. I think Emma Kenny's the only one I can't really remember because she has really nothing going on, but I think there was one scene that Emma Kenny kind of came in and threw a couple of lines out. But we're mostly focused on Darlene and Ben, Dan and Jackie, and a little bit with some of the other people with Dan, Louise. And then Mark has his own thing going on that is sort of a C plot. We only get maybe 2 scenes with it, but I think it will give us some other stuff to look at in season 7 as we move forward. I don't think the storyline with him is done yet. So I guess let's start there, shall we? Because it is, definitely the C story, and then maybe we have like we kind of have two C stories because Becky also has kind of a C story with Tyler, the Sean Astin character. He returns, and he's living there now at the house. So we'll start with all of that, I guess. So Mark basically is, well, Darlene thinks that he has some sort of job with a Fortune 500 company doing IT work and stuff, and that's what he tells her. So of course that's what she thinks. But Jackie is sort of looking at his portfolio, something on his laptop that is, his bank statement or whatever it is that is giving all of his information about how much is in his account, and she is just gobsmacked. Oh my God, like, where did you get this stuff? Darlene kind of plays it off. Oh, well, he's, that those IT jobs are, really pay and blah, blah, blah. I think we are to assume as the audience that this is, his money is in the tens of thousands, perhaps. And, Jackie senses something is off. So towards the end of the episode, she confronts him about it and says, look, I think I know what you're doing, and you're doing some illegal hacking for this money. And he cops to it and says, well, yes, that is true. I am doing that. But I needed to pay for school, and then I'm done. And she's like, no, that's how it starts, and whatever. So I think this is going to be, sort of an ongoing thread. But he basically says, don't tell my mom. I think Jackie is probably going to do that, and we'll see what happens there. I'm a little surprised that he admitted it so quickly. I mean, Jackie is in her 70s. She probably doesn't know how much an IT person makes. He could just have played that off. Although she did find a note in his bag, she went through his stuff, and the note did say, hey, you're a great hacker or whatever. So I don't know how he could have played that off, but in any event, that's what makes me think it's in the tens of thousands, is because if it was just a few $1,000s, I don't think it would be surprising. And he's saying, well, I'm using it to pay for school. School obviously is very expensive for college, so that makes sense in that arena. So, all right, that's, I think we'll get more of that story as the season continues. So let's go over to Becky and Tyler quick. They only have a couple of scenes together as well. But at one point in the middle of the episode, Becky comes over after Dan and Louise get in a little bit of a tiff about one of the big plots of the episode. And basically he says, like, look, I need somewhere to study. I'm trying to get my my master's here, and this is not conducive, my home, because Tyler is just all over me, and it's annoying and smothering me. So then we see a little bit later that he is trying to make her a quiche or something, and it comes out terrible. And she's like, look, this is, she doesn't actually, she lets him down very, very easy, because she basically says, hey, like, this is all great. I love, what you're doing, and this and that. But he kind of leans into that and says, oh, yeah, well, I feel like this is too much, trying to be perfect for you, and I just want to keep showing you how much I love you. Personally, look, this is smothering, I think, for sure. I think it's a little sad puppy dog, a little pathetic on his part. We're all grown people here. They're in their mid-40s, like I am, and I don't know. I feel like that would be quite smothering. But I understand the need for him to want to do that, to want to show his love. But he's not really picking up her signals, and they realize, okay, maybe we need to kind of not do all of these grand gestures anymore. She can get her stuff done, and he can find something to do. And we realize through this episode that him and Darlene really don't have any other friends, so at the very, the button on the end of the episode is he comes down and starts watching whatever show Darlene is watching, and she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he keeps talking and doing this commentary, and after just 40 seconds or whatever, she turns to him and she's like, nah, you can go, and this is better, alone, whatever. So kind of a funny tag scene there. But so that's sort of those C plots, and then we get to the B and the A. And I don't even know which is which. It's maybe a double A and a double C, and there's no B story. I don't know. But let's start with the Roseanne of it all. So in the very first scene, Jackie comes in and says, "Oh my God, I just went down to the police station, brought some brownies to them, and I was talking to one of the guys there who had an opioid addiction or whatever." And she's like, we can sue, people are suing now these pharmaceutical companies for opioid addictions and everything. Maybe we can sue them and get some money for Roseanne's death. And some people seem on board with it. Nobody seems like overly enthusiastic, really, but Dan seems very, very reserved about it. And in fact, walks out of the living room and says he doesn't want to, do that. And Louise is like, hey, don't push him. He says he doesn't want to do it. Well, they have a talk a little bit later in the episode, which is where Becky comes in the middle. But the two of them are talking, and he really does not want to do this. He says, look, I've spent years, dealing with the death of Roseanne. I don't want this to bring up a whole bunch of other stuff. I spent all this time grieving, and for a while I just imagined she was in another place, that I just couldn't see her, but she was still alive. And he mentions North Carolina, or something like that. North Dakota, is that what it was? But whatever, some other state. And then he's like, okay, then I went by her grave all the time, and it sunk in that she is, in the ground here and whatever. So he doesn't want to bring up a bunch of other stuff, and I can't blame him for that. I mean, this is now, if we're in the start of season 7, this is 6+ years that she's been gone, and look, he's remarried. Everybody seems happy with Louise and whatever. And like he says, none of it's going to ever bring Roseanne back. So yeah, I mean, I get that aspect of it. And I think this is something else that is going to be a through line for, the rest of this season and the rest of the series as a result. Talking about Roseanne and her addiction. And it's always funny to me, these people, and I see it, on I'm in TV groups on Facebook and everything. And I see all these comments always about, the loudest people are always, the jerkiest, right? But they're, the show was never the same after Roseanne, and they screwed over Roseanne, and this and that and the other thing. And I get some comments on my videos about that as well. And I'm sure because I'm talking about it, I may get even more. Although I imagine the people that make those comments don't even watch my videos. They just want to bitch and complain. But a comment is a comment, so it helps the algorithm. So thanks for that. Anyway, but I find it funny, the people that say that, because Roseanne's whole aura has been around the entire version of the Connors. Obviously season 1 was very, very heavy into Roseanne's character and all that, but even for the first 2-3 seasons, almost every episode had a mention of Roseanne. Or Dan would say, maybe not by name, but he would say, "Oh, your mom and I, would da 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 da." And so her aura has been around this entire series, as a loving tribute. Look, the cast, I'm sure a lot of them don't agree necessarily with her views, but nobody can deny that Roseanne sort of built this show up from the ground in the 80s, from her comedy act and everything. So, the fact that now we're still talking in season 7 about Roseanne, I can't imagine any other show. I mean, I've watched a lot of TV. I can't think of any other show that a main character has died on the show, and they've made more than maybe a couple of passing references to. I can't think of any. Valerie's family, yeah, they had a couple of episodes where they talked about it, and the big fire, and showed the picture of Valerie, and it was very sad. But then after that, she was never mentioned again. But it makes sense to me that a family would talk about their deceased mother, deceased wife, deceased sister, whatever. So it's always funny to me in those comments, the show was never the same after Roseanne left and all this. It's like, she is talked about more than almost anybody on this show. So it's just wild to me. But anyway, keep those hate comments coming, because a comment is a comment, like I said. But regardless, so I think we'll see more of that throughout this season. But at the end of that conversation with Louise, Dan even says, like, I need you to let me bitch and moan about it for a while and then twist my arm into doing it. Going after them. And she's like, this is your decision to make. I'm not going to twist your arm. If you want to do it, you have to, man up and do it yourself, basically. So we've got that. And then we've got, okay, I'll sort of go off on a tangent. Maybe this is the B story. Jackie wanting to be a cop again. We'll talk about Darlene and Ben in a second. But so Jackie goes in the beginning, like I said, to the police station to give brownies to them and whatever, say hello. I can't imagine too many people are still there from when she was off on the force. I mean, cops tend to retire a little earlier, than a lot of other jobs because it's a dangerous gig and whatever. But she was doing it in the mid 90s because it was before the Lanford Lunchbox even opened, if we're doing, the canon of the show. So she was a cop probably in the early 90s, I guess. Probably, 92, 91, 92, 93, something like that. So are there still people on the force 30 years after the fact? I don't know. Maybe some of the brand new recruits that were there when she was there. But anyway, so in the middle of the episode, she ends up at the bar and stops in. I don't know if it's on purpose to talk to this cop, but in any event, she sees the cop there and starts talking to her, saying, hey, I brought those brownies, and the cop has no idea. But she talks about, hey, maybe, I could get back on the force. I've been thinking about it. And the cop starts laughing and says, well, I don't know. But, the more they talk, they're like, well, we do have some desk jobs. We're always looking for desk jockeys. And she's like, no, I want to be, in the field, and challenges her to an arm wrestling contest to prove how tough Jackie still is. And the cop beats her handily. But look, I'm dancing around the issue here on purpose. The cop in question is played by Zoe Perry, who is most known for being the mother on Young Sheldon. But in real life, she is Laurie Metcalf's daughter. And I always thought that was just excellent synergy because, of course, Laurie Metcalf played Sheldon's mom on The Big Bang Theory. So when they went to cast the younger version, they went to Zoe Perry, who is Laurie Metcalf's daughter. So it was awesome to see them in a scene together, going back and forth. Very funny stuff. I would love for Jackie to make that her new mission, to get back on the force and to have Zoe Perry be, a little bit recurring for these last few episodes, maybe, 2 or 3 more visits with her. I loved her on Young Sheldon. And she's already made at least one appearance on the Georgie and Mandy First Marriage show as Mrs. Cooper. So, she's obviously still active, but I loved seeing them together. That was a lot of fun. So Darlene and Ben is the only story we haven't talked about. There's a lot of stories, obviously, that they've crammed into 22 minutes here. And Darlene gets a promotion at the beginning of the episode because her boss had died, and she's just back from the funeral. But we don't really explore that at all. We explore really Ben having gotten back from wherever he was. I forget what they said. And he's gonna start this magazine, this hardware magazine in Lanford. And so Darlene, got him this little workspace off of the kitchen at the house. It was very cute. And he's like, look, I appreciate this. This is great. But I actually rented some space downtown and we're going to work there. I'm going to have a few people work in and whatever. So Darlene starts talking to Louise about it. Well, actually, no, I guess that's after the fact. First, she talks to maybe Becky. I forget. But she decides to, make a little gesture for Ben. I think it was Becky she talked to. And so she goes down with this like little picnic setup and whatever, but she doesn't realize that there's a handful of other people there helping set up. And I don't know if they're going to be working there or they're just, workmen trying to set up the office or whatever. But in any event, he's like, oh, this is great, guys, come on over. And the guys and gals on the job start, picking through the basket and everything. So Darlene is left sort of, blown up in her face, I guess, her great gesture. So then she meets with Louise at the bar and they start talking about, hey, what am I supposed to do? And blah, blah, blah. They talk a little bit, I think, about the opioid thing as well, if I'm remembering that. But but yeah, they talk, and Louise is like, "Look, don't you have any other friends that you can hang out with while Ben's at work all the time?" And she says no, and that's sort of what leads into the tag at the end of the episode with Tyler, because we know that Darlene is a little lonely, she wants company, but Tyler is the wrong kind of company, as we learn in that joke there. But so that's the episode. Those are all the plots. This video is already long enough here, but um, I kind of talked about my opinions a little bit while I was discussing each topic. But yes, I think most of these are things that we're going to see continue through the season. Obviously, Becky going to school, Ben with the Upstart magazine, Darlene getting the promotion. I don't know if we'll see more of that or not. I forget what Darlene's even doing. Is she's still at the cafeteria, right, at the college? Or did that fail in the last season? I didn't rewatch any of last season's, and it's been almost a year. But I think she's still at the college. But obviously, I think the story we're going to get the most mileage out of might be Mark's. With his illegal hacking, especially if Jackie is really going to go back on the force, because then she's going to have a bit of a crisis of emotion or whatever, and crisis of conscience. Do I turn my nephew in or whatever, or no, what was he, would he be the great nephew? I don't know, whatever he is to Jackie. But yeah, so I think there's some interesting things going on there. But boy, it was just great to see everybody back. It really was. We didn't see Neville in this episode, but he is far from a regular. Katie Seagal and Sean Astin at this point, much more recurring. Louise even made the comment to Darlene that she's been on the opposite end of where she is. She's been on the Ben perspective of it, where she's been on the road for months at a time and away from the family. And if Dan had come to her concerts, it would have really pissed her off. Because he would be basically like following her and all of that. So yes, we don't see Louise for months at a time when she was on the road. Now I think she's set. I think we kind of saw in a previous episode that she sort of retired from the biz or whatever, or at least from touring. But yeah, it was so great to see everybody back. I'm upset that we only get 6 episodes, but we are blessed to have a 6 episode final season here for this family. I think the last 2 season finales really could have acted as series finales, especially Mark's graduation. That one to me was like, all right, they really didn't know if they were coming back or not. This acts as a series finale or a season finale. Last season, maybe not as much, but I think still maybe it could have, or maybe they knew they were coming back for a very short season 7 for that. So I forget. But anyway, I think for reboots, I can't think of any that have lasted really longer than this. Fuller House on Netflix, I think, was maybe 5 or 6 seasons. That was pretty popular, obviously. But when you include Roseanne season 10 in this, we've brought this family back now for 8 seasons, which is remarkable. So look, before we wrap, let's talk about the MVP. Let's talk about my grade. I think the MVP for the episode, and with so much going on, this is going to be a first for me. But for me, the MVP of the episode is actually the writers and the director, the behind the scenes people. Emily Wilson and Mitch Hunter wrote it. Jody Margolin-Hahn directed it. I'm going to give them the MVP because they really crammed a lot of story into 22 minutes. None of it necessarily felt rushed. And none of it felt finite either, except maybe, Becky and Tyler kind of working their thing out. So I think a lot of things we're going to keep seeing as the season continues. But I really think they did an excellent job of, putting all these stories together, a lot of them overlapping a little bit, overlaying. Jackie had her hand in a few different ones, for example. So yes, for me, they get the MVP. Look, this is not the greatest episode or anything like that, but it is just so nice to have this family back. I probably didn't laugh as much in this as I wanted to, but I will leave this episode. It is called, once again, It's Going to Be a Great Day. I leave it with a B+, a very solid start to the closing episodes here of The Conners. All right, look, thank you so much for sticking with me here and watching this review. We'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.